Hello, this is Blaire Stanislao with the Happy Lion Center. Welcome to our podcast, Mystical and Infamous, where we have playful and easy conversations about anything mystical, getting to the heart of all things strange and weird. Join us in a bit of magical tomfoolery, spreading the alchemy of love and light. And now, we invite you to enjoy the show. Fabi, would you just introduce yourself a little bit so that the listeners know who you are?
Yes. So I'm Fabi. I am a spiritual guide and mentor. I work with a lot of healers. I'm also a channel and multi-hyphenated business guide. I'm from South Africa originally. I've been in the US for about 10 years now. I have a 6-year-old and I'm married to my husband, Richie. And I spent the first half of my life in South Africa and in the corporate field. So I'm an accountant by before times. Then I woke up, I had my daughter, and that was a huge awakening. Parenthood, I think, is such a significant initiation, especially for mothers, and had all of the dark nights of the soul and went through significant just realizations and rememberings over the last few years, and started really dropping into the gifts that I came into this life with. And now I am so happy and honored to help other healers with their journey as they do the same. And I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So I just wanted to touch really quickly because you said something that I am interested in to learn more about. You said, I woke up and then I had my daughter. So what's the connection there, or the order, or tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian household. My dad was a pastor. So for most of my formative years, there was this relationship with the church and religion that never sat right with me. But I never really, I knew that there was something I was connected to. I always felt this yearning to connect with something outside of myself or inside of myself. And, it always just kind of eluded me. And I think when I started in the year of my Saturn return, it really started ramping up, right? As I feel like a lot of people realize. Then in that same year, I also married my husband. The next year, I had my daughter. So there was a lot of life changes happening. I had at that point been working, significant amount of hours, burnt out. I was a workaholic. I was in accounting. I had, the carrot was dangled out in front of me for what success had to look like. And my daughter's birth, and even just being pregnant with her, was such a significant milestone, but also rocked me to the core, right? Postpartum was very hard. And I needed to really look at my life from a different perspective, because now I had this tiny human. And I was like, there must be more to this than what I've been told. And that question had always eluded me, right? Like, it always was like, what is my purpose? That's, I think, was my driving, my spur in this lifetime was figuring out what my purpose was, because I never felt satisfied. And so it was always the search for something, but I never could really figure out what that was. And I think when my daughter was born, I was really forced to stop and take a look at my life and no longer just run away from the things that I'd been going through. And I have complex PTSD. So like therapy and really paying attention to my body and looking at the trauma that I experienced in childhood, all of those things were just, oh, I don't have time for that right now. I have so much to do. And I have a career to aspire to, and to climb the corporate ladder. So I used work very much as a way for me to get away from dealing with my shit. And then the big wake up call for me, and I think the big initiation, was motherhood, because it made me stop and wake up to the realization that there's more to this life than what I really am, what we've been told. And then fast forward to 2020, and I feel like the entire world was forced to wake up. And then I just kind of deep dove into all things spirituality. And I feel like back then there wasn't all these resources that is available now. And I think much more people now, it's much more, more people are talking about and have community. But back then it was very much like, well, if I'm not a Christian and I'm not in the church, what does that mean? And like, there was a lot of questioning. And so, yeah, waking up was kind of a gradual process, but I do feel like my daughter's birth was like that initial push of like, oh, okay, I've been asleep for a very long time, and there's more to this life than I've been told.
So I find it really interesting that you referenced, like, back then, previously, it felt like the information wasn't out there. I'm not in disagreement with you about that. However, if I look at like the timeline that we theoretically live on, like this linear timeline,
Mm-hmm.
I would have said the exact same thing when I was coming into what I understand to be now, which is more of a spiritual truth than what I had experienced
Yeah,
prior. So I find that really interesting. As a matter of fact, I just had Neil Donald Walsh on here, who is the author of the Conversations with God in a
yeah.
couple other books. And I asked him a question about channeling. I asked him if he channeled the books, and he had a response. It's really interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed his response, which was essentially, no, I don't channel. I didn't channel it. When you channel, it's like, so what he was describing was trance channeling. Well, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, 15 months ago, I didn't even know what trance channeling was.
Yeah.
Not that I hadn't seen it. I just had never heard that term or anything like that. So it's really interesting to recognize. It does feel like the stuff is not out there, but it is out there. It just requires the seeking of it, right?
Yeah, I do agree about that. I wonder if it's something to do with whether or not you're ready to receive that information, if it's going to come into your field, right? And so back then, I felt like I was hitting my head against the wall trying to find things, find out about things. But I do feel like now with TikTok and social media and much more people who are talking about these things, and maybe it's just because I'm in this world, it feels like it's out there more than when I was looking for it. But I do think there is something to whenever it's ready or you're ready to hear it, it'll come into your field. Um, but yeah, I wonder if I was like if someone is going through an awakening now, if they may feel the same way, even though we are on this side, feel like everything's out
Yeah, it's
there.
everywhere. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah, that's
but they're
interesting.
seeking these kinds of conversations to figure out, okay, if they are there, where are they so that we talk about them? And
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree that, I mean, I don't think it's even objectively incorrect to say that it really is more out there. I mean, 2020 was a huge shift for a lot of people. We had to stay home in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise. So
Yes.
this is something else I'm curious about. You said you have complex PTSD. Was that from your daughter or from other things as well? From having your
That
daughter?
was from um, childhood trauma.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I figured. So you've had a lot for a long
Mm-hmm.
time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting to me because there's this idea that desperate. I think it was Ram Dass who said desperation is a prerequisite,
Mm-hmm.
right, for going there. So you essentially, it works better when you're kind of desperate and really like, okay, this is
Uh-huh.
not going to work anymore. I have to go. And 2020 for a lot of people was in fact that. For me, on December 15th, 2024, I fell down and broke both my elbows at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And so even just that first night, I couldn't move sheets. I couldn't move my arms at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
without immense pain. And it's amazing if you get forced to just sit with that discomfort, how it's really uncomfortable, but it
Mm-hmm.
does shift things very quickly if
Mm-hmm.
you're able to sit through that, I guess, or sit with it is more like it, right?
And that's the thing with when you think about the spur, and I've done some work on this and channeling to understand just like the human, something that's really, for me, is really interesting is to understand just like how the universe is put together and what we're doing here and how the soul comes to incarnate and soul contracts and all of those. Just, I'm a Virgo rising, and so I love structure, but I also am a Aquarius sun and moon, so I love like chaos. So it's fun up around here. So, but one of the things I've channeled is around everyone has a different archetype they come into this play that we call life in, right? So this, each incarnation is a different, you just look at a full play in your character in this video game or whatever you want to call it, the illusion that we're in, right? And so everyone comes in with a specific set of soul contracts, but also things that spur you and what is your spur for your lifetime, right? And so that's what I call my spur. Like my spur was trying to figure out that that friction that causes you to move, right? So if we didn't have friction or if we didn't have a spur or discomfort, we would be complacent. We would not do people have to reach their rock bottom to change. That's where we are seeing what's happening right now in the world because we haven't reached rock bottom yet. I had channeled a few months before the election results, and I channeled Sophia, which is one of the primordial, gods or goddesses or whatever you want to call her. And she was like, just so you know, Trump is going to win. And the reason for it is because humans, especially Americans, have not reached their rock bottom yet. It hasn't gotten as bad as it needs to get. And so seeing it play out now and sitting at this from being able to understand how the universe works and being able to just step out of that. I remember in 2018 when he first won?
I don't know.
Was that? Yes. I don't know. The first election, I was devastated. That was still before I was, really understood how things are put together. I was like, I thought I was going to get deported because I was from a different country. There was all of this fear. I was very wrapped up in the fear spiral still. And the difference for me between that and now is immense because I can basically remove myself from and understand, these are just players. This is playing out the way it needs to be played out. And you can decide whether or not you're going to step into that fear spiral or not. And there's nothing wrong if you're still in that, but you have the free will to create your own reality and everything's neutral. And so what that is happening right now in the collective is literally needed so that people can wake up. We need that spur, we need that discomfort, which exactly the 2020 felt like the entire world shut down because we needed a reset. And that's what we needed. And that's why it was orchestrated as such, right? And so I am one of the people who are thank you for 2020, because there were so many things that I think we were headed down a path of no return. And luckily we were able to could reach hopefully soon a critical mass where more and more people are waking up.
Well, let's talk about that, because I really love that idea and it makes a lot of sense to me. But the idea of the critical mass, which as I understood it to be, it was it is a certain number of people, let's just say it's a percentage, right? There's a certain percentage of people on the earth who are coming to the awareness of what you just said, which is we are operating in a play in a sense, and we can decide where we go from here. And that, you said it in a different way, but essentially we are subconsciously picking and choosing the lives that we live, but we can actually shift into doing it more consciously.
Yeah.
Better lives for ourselves, or what we is being better. So if that's the case, if we have enough people who are shifting into that awareness of self-sovereignty, then we start to, of course, infiltrate, or maybe not infiltrate, maybe influence the masses so much faster.
Yeah.
That then all of humanity has the ability to wake up to this. So what is your take on that experience, and what do you feel like what do you think is coming? Have you channeled anything on that's specific?
So one of the things, I don't know if you've heard about disclosure, right? So disclosure is basically an event that has been channeled by multiple channels. And basically, if you read the Raw Contact, which is have you read Raw's work, The Law of One? Um, it it is a set of channelings that was done in the 80s in Kentucky, and it was about 140 sessions where these researchers had someone do basically the channeling that you just mentioned, right? She was laying on the bed, her consciousness left her body, extraterrestrial consciousness entered her, right? So, and then they had someone who was asking questions, and then someone was taking notes. All of this is available online for free, all the transcripts. And so took a deep dive into all 140 of them, and it is so interesting because the questions they ask were all the questions you could think of about how everything is put together. So Ra is the extraterrestrial entities that these researchers channeled, and Ra was also the extraterrestrials that helped build the pyramids in Egypt and in South America. So just as a background, so one of the things from that channeling that I learned and others have shared is that Earth is basically at some level in quarantine. So up until now, if there were any extraterrestrials who wanted to make contact with Earth in some way, they needed to get approval from something or some like a group called the Galactic Federation. And the Galactic Federation is basically the guardians of the galaxy in a different word, and they help keep order. They help. It's basically like we're all the different what do you call them? People from, not people, but entities from different places would have a space there to make decisions about what happens in our solar system or beyond. And for Earth, because of how the third dimension works, right? So as in the third dimension, if you come incarnate, you forget everything, and that's the point, right? So the point of third dimension is for you to go through Earth school, forgetting everything about past lives as well as previous incarnations, so that you can ultimately learn how to reconnect with love and remember who you are. And so if you think of that, for that setup to work, we have to be in the dark. So we have to be in, we're basically not allowed to know what the truth is until we're ready to hear it. So you kind of need to do your own work and learn and work through your own blockages, learn the lessons that you signed up for as a soul to learn in Earth School, and then slowly but surely learn the truth of who you are, of what's happening. However, every 75,000 years, a planet needs to ascend, or basically is set to ascend into the next dimension. And Earth has kind of passed its deadline to ascend. And so in the 60s or 70s, a call went out to everyone in the galaxy, basically asking to support Earth, because they basically realized that we are going down the wrong road, and the humans have not actually done the work that they needed to. They're so stuck in their Maya that it doesn't look good for Earth's ascension kind of trajectory. And one of the milestones to see whether or not we are making progress is something called disclosure, which basically means that once a certain level of people, aka critical mass, have done their own work and have basically stepped out of their Maya and woken up, quote unquote, that means that what they call is non-interference, which is basically non-interference is what they call not Earth being in quarantine. So they're not allowed to interfere with our process on Earth.
I see. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So they are prohibited, they being the extraterrestrials, the Galactic Federation, really anyone is prohibited to interfere with an individual soul's progression in this game on Earth. But that non-interference rule is lifted once a critical mass has done their work and has gotten to there by themselves. And so disclosure hopefully is coming in the next year. Like it's imminent, as imminent as it always can be, because they always say it's a date and then it passes because of some other reason. But basically, disclosure is a big possibility for 2025, which is exciting. Mm-hmm. But I've also channeled that it's not going to be like an alien ship over Manhattan, like some you know movie that we've watched. It's not going to be as what do you call it? It's not going to be as fear inducing, right? Like the idea isn't that we like scare because that would create chaos. So it will probably be some type of transmission where that those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear will hear. And it won't be like everyone, because again, if you are still asleep and that is not part, like being part of the, process to help Earth awaken is not part of your soul plan, then hearing this may be harmful to your path. And so it's almost like disclosure can only happen again when a certain amount of people are able to get to a point where their vibrational frequency is high enough so that they can hear the transmission of disclosure. So it's almost like we are tuning our nervous systems and our frequency to the point where, again, working on your own inner work, doing your spirit, doing your, inner healing, get your vibration to a certain point so that when we reach that critical mass and disclosure happens, you're able to basically hear the transmission, and then that will basically start like a steamroll for those who are here as starseeds to help the process of waking up the rest of the planet. But I also think what people don't understand is like the ascension of Earth is not going to happen in probably in even our lifetime. Like it is a process, and it's going to take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years and it's not going to be just like one day you wake up and then we're on a different Earth. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what ascension actually means.
Let me clarify something before we go on too far. So you're saying disclosure is essentially when the other species from other places are coming to give us information that will help us? Is that what the deal is? Okay, so yes. We had to reach the critical mass to be able to receive that disclosure.
Correct. Or even disclosure as in, we are here. You are not alone on this planet. So basically like disclosing the fact that there are currently hundreds of spaceships circling Earth, but they're not allowed to make themselves known to the populace of Earth because of non-interference. Okay, so what I have I don't know what your personal experiences are, but I have not had personally that I remember. Maybe there was something I don't remember, but I don't remember. Maybe I do. I don't remember a really dramatic thing where, I've gone into meditation. I mean, I have been in other species on other planets, yes. But I've not like downloaded specific thing. And frankly, I don't get hung up on whatever, because to me, they're all stories. Like it doesn't really matter what any of my past stories are, because it's the storyline is the plot. The information that you get from the story is the part. Exactly.
So I'm interested in, the story is the vehicle, but I'm more interested in the other stuff. So what I'm saying is I have had stories that have told me, sure, I've been part of that, but I haven't had anything that was like super dramatic where, I don't even get hung up on the names of the alien races or like, I don't get it. But I kind of am curious what, let's see, because to me, it's all over the place. All you have to do is look. People are saying that all the time. There's this, there's that. Oh, look at this thing. They've got it on video. And even though AI has become much more popular this year, And granted, I have been doing graphics for a long, long time, so I'm a very visual person. And most of the time I can look at it and be like, yeah, that's AI, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can pretty much tell, but there are videos out there that is like, no, that is not AI, not AI at all. I'm kind of curious as to how, Bashar says it. He said it one time I don't watch him all the time, but I watch him occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
One time he said this, and I thought that is such a perfect description. He was describing us existing in whatever dimension we're in, and it's almost like there's glass walls or something in between
Mm-hmm.
dimensions. And if you change your vibration, you can walk through to another dimension.
Correct.
You can also see to other dimensions. So you can see
Mm-hmm.
dimensions lower. I don't know that you can see dimensions higher, but that's the idea
Mm-hmm.
that you can see other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And that thought process that it's not going to be something that very much like one of my favorite movies, Arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Whole
Yeah.
world is just it's not necessarily
No.
like that, but there's going to be something there, and things like Arrival was one of my favorite movies, not because it's an alien and all this, any of that stuff. It was, again, it was the meat of the story, which is time is not linear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, this is detailed how it's not
Yes.
linear, and the story was put together so beautifully.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just wanted to make sure I
No.
understood what disclosure was. And
Yeah.
okay, so we're essentially, it's kind of like a goal that we're getting to receive and
Correct.
help us. And
A hundred
I would
percent.
venture to say, if you're looking for it, the information is out there. I
Yes,
mean, here we are having this conversation.
it is. And so it's like it's almost like those of us who are those of us who are kind of at the front lines of this. Um, I feel like we're we need to be very careful as to assuming um, that everyone that there isn't like more that needs like there's so many more people who aren't waking up and that need those that of us who are being kind of woken up at first to go back and support them and to help them along. And I think that's probably the next. I've heard a lot of just channeled a lot of things, and I've heard a lot of channelers talk about like the next iteration of the spiritual path is a community, right? Like we are meant to be in community versus everyone just doing it by themselves. And I think for me personally, when I woke up, it was me, myself, and I, right? And I think we're being called to now take what we hear, take what we're channeling, take what we're learning, and turn around and share it with those who are in our sphere because they are there um, because you have signed a soul contract with them. And if you're a front runner, if you're someone that is getting information, who is waking up first, you're the way shower, right? And so it's hard because you're the one screaming out there and being like, wake up. And everyone's like, you're crazy. But it's not for you to keep it to yourself, right? It is because we have a job to do, right? Like we have, and like you said, like it's not about, people love to know where they're from and what if they're a star seed or not, and if they're what galactic family they're from, and there's so many extraterrestrials on Earth at this point. It really doesn't matter anymore, but it does help you, especially when you want to connect with your spirit guides or you want to connect with your galactic family. It helps to have that information. But again, don't harp too much on that information because I think a lot of people think, oh, I need to have had like this, like you said, a big, you know, abduction on like a spaceship, or it needs to be this big pomp and circumstance, or I need to feel like Earth is alien for me to really be a star seed. And there's this like hierarchy we're starting to create where if you're a star seed, you're like higher than if you're not a star seed. Like I think
Yeah.
as humans, we do this thing where like we want to create these hierarchies, which I think what we need to remember ultimately is this is all an illusion, and there's no such thing as separation, and I am you and you am I, and ultimately there is no such thing as separation, and we're just here in a video game, right? So we're all of the stuff that we're creating is basically us playing Sims. And
Yeah.
your
And it's interesting you say that about the hierarchy because that the belief system that there needs to be a hierarchy is very human,
hmm
right?
hmm
And I
hmm
struggled actually a lot with exactly what you're talking about there, people getting hung up on this whatever the story is, right? And I took a channeling course last year. 'Cause I thought it would be really cool, and I took the course, and he did a really great job. Um, but as soon as I get in the course and I realize what it is, I'm like, oh, I've been doing that my whole life.
hmm
And it's a feeling that you know. And
Yeah.
so I'm completely confident in that. And now I'm taking another one for fun because this woman is really, really good at articulating all the different ways of doing it and so forth. And that right there was something that I actually had to shift in I'm sure it's my mind about because that particular person does. I think it has to do with language because language is so limiting. So she does
hmm
some practices and she tells us to do these practices, but the purpose behind it, I get. Like it's to clear
mm
up the energy or to call back your energy, and it feels very different. So when you do it in a certain
mm
way, it can feel cleaner than it has for me in the
mm
past. And the name thing is like a really big thing
mm
because
hmm
um I'm not very good with names. I never have been.
hmm
But I very early on understood, okay, my name is Blaire. That's what they call me. I have to respond to
mm
that, right?
hmm
But that's not
hmm
who I am. And I
Yes,
never thought that about anybody else. So that's why their names don't stick with me.
exactly.
Unless they do something really weird or I'm really interested in them for some reason, the names don't stick. And so going into this channeling thing, and they're like, oh, this archangel, la la, la, whatever. And I'm still not very good at it. Okay. But what I learned the difference was, and it's really interesting because I have somebody who works with me and a friend of mine who's actually, she did this naturally. It's this way of you're in the zone, you're channeling, you're getting information. You turn around, in a sense, you turn around and talk to the energy, whatever it
hmm
is. And that's where the name thing I have seen, maybe that does help because we have the constructs of language. You listen, I talk, you talk, I
hmm
think. So, and that becomes an exchange
hmm
where I think giving an energy a particular name would allow for more of that conversation. Whereas, like in the first official channeling course I was in, they've spent hours, I mean, like 3 full classes on protection and I don't know, all the negative things that come in, like
Yes.
I don't even have the words for them. And I'm just
Yeah.
sitting there and I was having the hardest time. I just put myself on mute, turned the camera off, and I was just like, I can't. I was about to call my friend and be like, I don't know if I can handle this class. And it really was, it's because it's entertaining the idea of fear and that you actually
hmm
need protection and all of that. And that's
hmm
really hard for me. Whereas I would get to where I had to have a conversation with them about this. And they would
hmm
ask their questions, and I'm like, how do you not know it's the right energy? Like,
hmm
it's hard to explain. You
Yeah.
just know if that's
Yes.
decent energy or if it's not a good energy.
Yeah, and it's hard. I think this is such a change, I feel like, from the first wave of star seeds and the first wave of channeling. I agree. Like a lot of people I come in contact with, and when I started, reading a lot about channeling, because I was like, oh, I want to channel, and then I started doing it. I was like, oh, this is the worst. I hate it. I was like, it don't. I was always tell people don't think it's the most glamorous thing, because once you start opening your channel, it's like I'm like incessantly like, leave me alone. I have things to do. Like there's some days I'm like, do I need to know who you are? And they're like, no. I'm like, cool. Do
Yeah.
you need anything from me? No, cool. Do your thing, right? Like I have a very, very interesting relationship with my guides. But when I started out, again, there was all of this, like, ask them all of these questions and like protection and so based in fear.
Uh,
And the first thing that my guides told me as soon as I started really connecting with them is like, there shouldn't be any fear here. Like it's not supposed to be, obviously you want to have um energetic hygiene, right? Especially with other humans. But honestly, even like other humans are more of a um other humans' energy on you is actually more of a threat, if you want to call it that, than any like, guides or whatever. And so I always tell people, especially those who have been in other circles who have a fear mindset, because I do feel like there's a lot of teachers and a lot of mentors and a lot of people who teach classes who do harp so much on the entity attachments and
Mm-hmm.
interference and like you need to like all of the stuff. And I'm like, you're in the fear spiral. And when you're in the fear spiral, you're going to create
More.
your reality,
Yes.
which creates more. Like this is just like going to continue to happen. And it's so funny because of the work I've done and the work I do. I do a lot of entity attachment, like unburdening work, right? So like when I get a new client, the first thing I check if whether they have an entity attachment. And I surprisingly in the last few months I've done a lot of them, but it was so funny because I did in 1 month, I probably did like 12 different people who had all been working with a specific, very famous
Oh.
person who is in that mindset of the like she teaches about entity attachments, but she was the one who was basically like attaching her energy and an entity to all the people she had like been in contact with. And so it was like this whole thing, but it was just so funny because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? She was like, she's so in this fear mindset. And so everyone that comes into her field ended up getting into attachment. It was a whole thing. But I think what's interesting when I look at a lot of these people who speak on this, especially on social media, as soon as I open someone's profile, I can see immediately. I don't know if that's something that you have picked up on. Like I pull someone up and I can like immediately be like, either they have an entity attachment or two, their energy is so leaky. And it's like this like contraction that happens. And I'm like, oh, well, they have 100 million followers on social media, but I would not like come with a 10-foot pole, like, close to them. And it's so interesting when you start like really paying attention to the energies that are currently like the popular people in the spiritual world. It's so just like sitting back and looking at them is like, okay.
It is really interesting. And I think mine is more of a very, very basic kind of response. It's either like, oh, I really like this person, I'm drawn to them, or it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's
I
it.
mean, you don't know why, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's immediately no. You're like, no, I don't want to be in that person's energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if to me, I'm seeing, like, I didn't realize this, but I really do see things in a different way. I do have a different kind of vision where we have this conversation and I have this image going around doing all of this
Yeah.
stuff. So what I see is that the language thing is an issue. Okay, so let's
Mm-hmm.
say that they are talking about channeling or whatever they're talking about. And it's really helpful because now somebody's talking about it. So
Yes.
now that I had the interview with Neil, I mean, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if he heard anywhere else, but he definitely heard from me. Well, channeling's not
Yes.
just that, right?
Yes.
So and he helped to bring that about. His book,
Yes.
even though he wasn't aware that
Yes.
channeling is what it is now that we're aware of, he
Yes.
helped to bring that forward. So I kind of feel like even though people like that are talking about all this kind
Yes.
of spiritual world, and maybe they have those entity attachments because that's what
Yeah.
they believe in, they're still bringing things forward.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And
So
so
here,
I always say that everyone, like we are at different levels, and the person that needs that person will connect with that person where they are, and you will outgrow all your teachers at some point. And so, like, don't make someone your guru, don't make someone your God, because that person is human like you are, and you're just in different parts of your journey. And just because I know all of this and whoever's listening doesn't mean that there's no hierarchy. It just means that I am on my path, and it's not, this information is available to everyone. And that's, I think, the thing that people don't realize is like, um, be very discerning, I think, when you listen to people who are channeling or bringing through information. Even, myself, I always say, like, take what resonates and rates and leave what doesn't. If something doesn't feel right in your body, there's a reason for it. So don't go down that road. Just trust your own sovereignty and your own intuition. But I think a lot of people don't know how to trust because they don't spend time with themselves enough, and they don't know what yes feels like, what truth feels like in their body. And so they go down a path following someone, worshiping them because they're bringing them all this information, or they're making them feel seen, whatever the reason is. And then ultimately they wake up and they're like, what, where have I gone? Like I'm down a road that I don't even recognize myself anymore. And I think it's because we're so used to outsourcing our intuition and our sovereignty, and we want others to tell us, please tell me what I need to do, or please tell me what is right. But ultimately, you have the ability to realize and to pull all this information through. You just need to really sit with yourself and do your own work, which I feel like I'm seeing more and more people do, but it's really hard. So I can see why people don't want to do it.
Well, I don't know if I would say it's hard, but it's uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, it is.
That's what we don't want to experience. So that's actually where I was going to go. That's the next ultimate question. And I think it certainly plays into our human experiences that you and I are having right now. I was actually just thinking this past week, like, okay, so I have essentially shifted from doing a lot of energy work and even massage and other things into I want to help people come to self-realization. Like that's, and so I got this, I'd been preparing for it all before. I didn't know that, but now I see the connections and I understand where it goes. And so now I have this program, and we just started the program, and it's been a very interesting experience to watch. So the program itself is about experience. It's not your traditional, in the past, the instructor stands up and gives information and you consume that information. It's more experiential, and it's also very community oriented. So even as the facilitator, I noticed first off that it went really well. I have some people in there that are just amazing already, right? But the experience was really good so far. They've already made shifts. I've made shifts too. And what I've noticed is first I was like, wait a minute. My first response was, oh, this was so easy. I love this. This is totally going to work. And then it was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm not giving them what they are expecting. Right. And so then the ego comes in, the mind comes in, that kind of thing. And then now I've shifted into a new level with, kind of merging those two kind of things together. So what I'm saying is it's interesting to watch, because even someone like myself or you who are helping people do things, and we're always saying it's within you, you have to go inward to find your answer. They're coming to us for help, and I think there's going to be a big shift in let's see, what do I say? The expectation maybe of when enough people come to this realization that it's all within them, their expectations of somebody else is going to be entirely different. So what they get from that person through their interaction is going to be something entirely different than it has been in the past.
Yes. And it's so interesting you bring this up, because the thing is, right, once you get to a certain level, you basically want someone to guide you through it, like you said, an experience, and not be like a coach or like tell you what to do, right? And so there's such a difference when they say people, are you going to teach someone how to fish, or are you going to, catch a fish for them, right? Like and I always say that the healers I work with, and I work mostly with people who have been doing this for a while, or they really feel like there's something in them and they're here to be a healer. And I always say that even if you are the one who others come to, you still need to do your inner work, and you still need someone to be a mirror to you and a reflection to you, and kind of go deeper. So because the deeper you can go, the more capacity you create to hold others. And so we all need those people in our lives, no matter where you are in your journey, that will hold you and can hold you, as well as can reflect back to you what are those things that you where you're still like in the loops, or where are the lessons that are still being learned. Because I always say, like, if you're done with this earth school, then you would not wake up in the morning, right? So like every morning you wake up because you're not done yet, and there's more for you to experience. And so like you said, like, this is an experience. And so it goes from me, again, standing in the front and like being at the Fabi show, and I'm going to like jump up and down and show you all the cool things I could do. No, this is your experience, and I will show you I'll guide you to it, and I will support you and hold you and kind of hold you accountable, and I will hold space for you, and I will be a reflection for you. But ultimately, this is your experience to have, and the deeper you can go and want to go is all up to you, because you have free will, right? And I think us as facilitators, we need to make sure that we stay in as much groundedness and alignment, so that we don't step into their story. We stay on our side, and we hold the guardrails, but they're the ones that need to go on this journey as those that we are here to serve. And then also really being like, okay, where am I playing small, for example? Like, I think a lot of healers are like, I feel like there's more here. That, the clients I've been serving for a while, it's the same thing. And like you said, like, once you get to a point where you're like, it took years for me to get to a place where I even could do massage or energy healing, and feeling like you have to do that for the rest of your life, there's going to become a time when you're like, this is no longer it for me. And it takes people so long to accept that there's something more. And I think that's where I love working with people, because it isn't the first step is almost harder. The second step is almost harder than the first step, because you're so not complacent, but you're like, this is my thing. I'm going to do this. And, as we know, people don't love change, but also people want to be seen as one thing. And so you don't want to be seeming like, oh, well, I'm doing this and I do this and I do this. But there's going to come a time where you're going to be expected to expand. And that expansion is always uncomfortable, right? It's going to feel like you're stretching yourself. But if you don't, then you're going to stagnate. And that's when your business starts to feel like, oh, no, I'm going to have to see these clients again. And so, but for you to expand, it's going to require you to really do your inner work. Look at your patterns, look at your ego, look at all the different parts that come up and how you're playing small. And so a lot of us have to look at our witch wounds, have to look at where are the parts of us that are playing at a level that we have outgrown, but it's too scary to level up, to step up. But the people we are here to serve are looking for that next level of a guide. And if you don't step up, that's not part of your evolution. Like, we always are here to evolve into the next step.
Yeah, I really love that. And everybody has that level of comfort where they
Yes.
feel good. But what I am really, really interested in is getting to the place where I'm sensitive enough to recognize that experience and make the shift before something dramatic like broken elbows or a car wreck or a dead husband or whatever these things are, before that comes in. Because if you don't listen, I find that kind of
Exactly.
stuff usually does happen.
Oh yeah, because the universe whispers and then whispers a bit louder, and then starts to maybe like speak at like a little bit louder, and then starts to shout, and then it starts to scream at you, and then it kicks you off of the cliff.
Yeah.
Because that's just how it works, right? And your every single thing that you're experiencing, your soul, your superconscious basically have agreed to and have consented to. And so if your consciousness and your subconscious does not want to get with the program and does not listen to the subtle nudges, something huge is going to happen. Because again, we are here. If you're listening to this, you probably are here to do big work. And it feels like, it may feel scary to hear this, but the collective consciousness of Earth requires you and needs you to get up and do the thing. And so, yes, if you don't, it really is going to get to a point where you cannot ignore it anymore. And again, it doesn't have to happen that way. And you're right, like as you do this work and you really start to understand what the subtle cues are, you can just like make little adjustments, and it can be so easeful because it doesn't have to be hard. And so we kind of come in full circle. The struggle piece comes in when we don't listen, right? Because the struggle comes in because you don't listen to the small little nudges. And so then things have to become hard because, otherwise we won't listen. And so it's like, when you start really listening to the small nudges and you really take every day as like a new opportunity to come home to yourself, to realize what is in the highest for me and how to connect with my guides, how to connect with my intuition, your life will just feel so much more in flow, because that's what it is. You're in alignment. And being in alignment doesn't mean that things aren't going to go quote unquote badly, but it is what Bashar talks about, is everything is neutral and every experience can either be seen as positive or negative, but you're assigning whether it's positive or negative. The experience in and of itself is neutral. So as you start to do this work and the deeper you get, you're going to see that every single thing that's happened to you wasn't happening to you. It was happening for you. And as you work through those layers of like trauma pockets or, complex trauma or whatever it is, past life things that are still impacting you, as you go through those layers, you're going to start to see that every single thing was there for a reason. And then the cool part is when you start to really be in this moment and see what is happening for you in every single moment, you're able to kind of recalibrate and no longer just be the player in the game. You can also, you realize that you can not only subconsciously create your reality, but consciously influence and create your reality, which people call manifesting. But that's a whole other thing that I think is very misunderstood and misconstrued. But it's basically you're no longer being puppeteered by your subconscious or by your wounds. You're able to consciously make decisions and be in alignment versus it happening to you, which it never did. It never did happen to you. It's just your perspective. And so once you can shift your perspective, because perception is reality, right? I always say, like, we're in the Hunger Games, and like your spirit guides are like all the people watching, you in the dome, and you can either be aware of them and ask them for help, right? So like ask for Hamish to help you, send you things, or you can just play the game as if you have no control over it and just be a mindless player in the game, which I feel like is like the before time, still being in the matrix, in your Maya. Or you can look up and be like, oh, I see the dome. This is actually a game. And then the next step is, oh, I can actually ask my guides or, those watching to support me. They have a view of this game that I don't have. So how can I use it to my advantage? And then the next level is, okay, how am I going to cheat this game? Because there's cheat codes everywhere, right? So how am I going to cheat this game and no longer be the victim in the Hunger Games and actually like play it to my advantage? Which I love as an analogy.
Yeah, I really like that. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical and Infamous podcast with the Happy Lion Center. Send requests for topic discussions, questions, and comments to podcast@happylioncenter.com. That's podcast@happylioncenter.com.